Morning at the pottery workshop. The first light of dawn creeps softly over the village, touching the edges of thatched rooftops and the cobblestone paths with pale gold. The air is cool, carrying a hint of dew and the distant scent of smoke from hearth fires inside a small wooden workshop. A medieval potter stirs awake. He stretches slowly, feeling the stiffness in his back from yesterday's labor, and steps barefoot onto the cold earthen floor. The workshop is simple but functional. Wooden shelves line the walls, stacked with clay pots, mugs, and bowls in various stages of drying. Tool scrapers, paddles, wooden ribs, and sponges lie neatly arranged on a bench worn smooth by decades of use. Sunlight filters through a small window, dust motes dancing lazily in the beams. The quiet is profound, broken only by the distant crowing of a rooster, the soft murmur of a stream nearby, and the faint rustle of leaves stirred by a gentle morning breeze. The potter walks to a large, shallow trough of water, dipping his hands to wash away the sleepiness clinging to them. He pulls a slab of clay from the shelf, feeling its cool, damp texture, and begins to knead it. The clay is heavy and sticky at first, resisting his hands, but gradually softens under his touch. He presses and folds, pushing out air bubbles with deliberate care. Each movement is rhythmic, meditative. He thinks of the long lineage of potters who came before him, their hands molding clay in workshops much like his own. Outside, life is beginning to stir. Chickens peck at the soft earth, and a few villagers carry buckets of water or baskets of vegetables along narrow paths. Potter pauses to listen, letting the sounds of the village seep into his senses. There is no rush here. The day will unfold according to its own pace, dictated by the clay, the wheel, and the sun once the clay is prepared. The potter inspects the pieces left from the previous day, a small mug with a delicate handle, a shallow bowl, a storage jar, each is dried to a pale, chalky surface. He runs his fingers along the edges, feeling for cracks or imperfections. Some pieces require smoothing, others are perfect. Potter works slowly, his hands moving in small, precise motions, brushing away tiny flecks of clay, nudging a rim into a more symmetrical shape. The work is quiet but absorbing. There is a rhythm here, a sense of calm satisfaction that fills the entire workshop. By mid-morning, he pauses for a simple breakfast, bread slightly coarse from the whole grains, accompanied by a small slab of cheese and a sip of cool water from a well. He eats slowly, savoring each bite, listening to the subtle sounds around him, the faint scraping of a cart in the distance, the soft bleating of a lamb. Even this mundane act becomes a mindful ritual, a quiet moment before returning to the clay. Returning to his workbench, the potter begins to plan the pieces he will shape today. Perhaps a set of mugs for the local tavern, small storage jars for grains, or bowls for the villagers' kitchens. He selects a lump of clay, smooths its surface, and begins to form the first piece. His hands press gently, coaxing the clay into shape. Outside, the sunlight grows warmer, casting soft, golden shadows across the room. The workshop is filled with the faint scent of wet earth, mingling with the aroma of the bread he had for breakfast. Time passes slowly, each piece is handled with care, every curve shaped with attention. Occasionally, the potter stops to wipe his hands on a cloth, to inspect a piece from different angles. Small imperfections are noted but not fretted over. Each mark tells a story of the day. The clay is tempered and his own hands work. The act of creation is unhurried, deliberate, almost ceremonial. Mid-morning brings a visit from a few villagers. They enter quietly, browsing the shelves. The mother examines a small bowl for her children. A farmer inspects a jar for storing grain. Potter greets them with a nod and soft words, answering questions patiently. Once the villagers leave, he returns immediately to the wheel, where the clay awaits. The interruption was brief but welcome, a reminder that his work exists within a larger community, serving daily life in quiet but essential ways. As the morning stretches toward noon, Potter sets aside pieces that are ready to dry. He places them carefully on wooden shelves, near the window where the sunlight will touch them, accelerating the drying process just enough without risking cracks. He steps back, admiring the rows of shapes, each one distinct yet harmonious, each one a small promise of utility and beauty. Finally, before taking a brief rest, Potter pauses near the open doorway, looking out over the village. Smoke rises from chimneys, a cart rattles over the cobblestones, and the distant murmur of villagers going about their day fills the air. He breathes deeply, letting the scents and sounds mingle with the quiet satisfaction of his morning labor. In this serene, measured rhythm, the potter finds a simple joy, a connection to the earth through the clay, to the village through the objects he creates, and to the generations of hands that have shaped the same earth before him. It is a morning of quiet productivity, of deliberate care, of slow, mindful work, a gentle beginning to a day that will unfold at the same steady, meditative pace. Shaping and spinning after a brief pause for rest and reflection, the potter returns to the heart of his workshop. The spinning wheel, the wooden wheel, smooth from decades of use, sits at the center of the room, a humble yet vital tool. Light filters through the small window, casting long, golden beams across the earthen floor. Dust motes float lazily in the sunlight, and the faint aroma of drying clay mingles with the scent of polished wood. He wets his hands on the surface of the clay, feeling the cool, malleable texture between his fingers. The lump of clay is placed carefully in the center of the wheel. Potter breathes slowly, centering himself as he begins to turn the wheel. First, the clay wobbles slightly, resisting his touch, but with patient, deliberate pressure. His hands coax it into symmetry. Slowly, the lump rises beneath his fingers, transforming into a cylinder, then into the gentle curve of a mug. Each movement is meticulous, deliberate, never rushed. The potter works steadily, feeling the clay respond to his touch. He smooths the surface with the pads of his fingers, pressing gently to correct minor imperfections. Every adjustment is careful, considered. Outside, the village continues its morning routines. The distant laughter of children echoes faintly, chickens peck at the soft earth, and a cart rattles along a cobblestone street. These sounds are background music to the potter's quiet labor. As the wheel spins, he reflects on the history of his craft. For centuries, hands like his have shaped clay into functional objects: bowls, mugs, storage jars, and water vessels, each piece a small testament to human ingenuity and patience. He thinks of his own master, who taught him not just the techniques, but the rhythm of working slowly, the satisfaction of careful, deliberate creation. Several mugs are completed in the morning hours. Each is unique, with subtle differences in shape and thickness. The potter does not mind these variations. They are marks of life, but they spent in careful labor. Some mugs have tiny imperfections, slight indentations or uneven rims. Others are smooth and symmetrical, pleasing to the eye. Each piece carries the imprint of the potter's hands, a quiet signature that will endure long after the workday ends. Occasionally, potter pauses to step back, inspecting the work from different angles. He taps gently on the side of a mug, listening for hollow notes that indicate dryness or flaws. The room is filled with the faint sound of the spinning wheel, a soft whirring that blends with the distant village noises outside. He runs his fingers along the rims, smoothing edges with small, practiced motions, ensuring that each piece will serve its purpose well. Time passes slowly. Hours stretch lazily, measured not by the clock, but by the rhythm of the wheel and the changing light in the workshop. He hums softly to himself, a low, steady tune that seems to echo off the wooden walls and clay shelves. Each hum is a gentle companion to the work, a reminder that creation is as much about presence and attention as it is about skill. A few villagers stop by to observe. A mother examines a small bowl for her child. Baker inspects a storage jar for flour. A farmer considers a pitcher for milk. Potter greets them politely, offering quiet guidance and gentle reassurances about the durability and usefulness of each piece. Once they leave, he returns to the wheel, resuming his work with renewed focus. The interruptions are brief, like gentle breaths in the steady flow of the day. By mid-morning, the potter moves on to shaping larger vessels. He takes a soft, pliable lump of clay and begins the slow process of forming a storage jar. The clay responds, gradually rising into a tall cylinder beneath his hands. He presses, smooths, and shapes, carefully adjusting the rim, thickening the base, and evening out the curves. The wheel spins steadily, and the potter's movements are synchronized with its rhythm. A dance of precision and patience. Outside, the sun climbs higher in the sky. The village hums with life. The blacksmith hammers steadily. The baker kneads dough. Children chase one another through narrow alleyways. The potter, however, is absorbed entirely in the clay. He senses the air's humidity, noting that the warmth of the sun will quicken the drying process. He pauses briefly to wipe his hands, feeling the slight stickiness of the clay, the cool smoothness of the water used to keep it workable. Hours drift by. Each vessel is carefully crafted, placed aside to dry and inspected. The potter reflects on the subtle variations in the clay. Some pieces respond quickly, rising into shape easily. Others resist, demanding more attention and care. He embraces these challenges, finding satisfaction in the gentle negotiation between human hands and natural material. By late afternoon, a dozen pieces have been shaped, each awaiting the next stages of drying and firing. The potter carefully moves them to wooden shelves, ensuring even spacing to allow air to circulate. He steps back, observing the array of forms, mugs, bowls, jars, and pitchers, each a testament to slow, mindful labor. Shadows from the setting sun stretch across the room, creating patterns on the walls that mimic the curves of the clay. Finally, as the day approaches evening, the potter wipes his hands and takes a moment to reflect. The spinning wheel is still, the room bathed in soft golden light. He feels a quiet pride in the day, as work the transformation of simple earth into objects of utility and beauty. The village outside continues its own rhythm, unaware of the slow, deliberate artistry unfolding within the workshop walls. The potter sits for a few minutes, breathing deeply, feeling the residual energy in his hands, the soft ache of muscles used well. He knows that tomorrow will bring more clay, more shaping, and more opportunities to practice patience and precision. For now, however, he rests in the calm satisfaction of a morning well spent, in harmony with the clay, the wheel, and the gentle rhythm of medieval life. Gathering materials and the village life, the sun has climbed higher in the sky, warming the village with gentle rays that filter through the leaves of the surrounding trees. Potter stretches his stiff muscles from the morning's labor at the wheel, feeling the pleasant fatigue that comes from focused, mindful work. Today is time for another essential part of his craft, gathering clay, the raw material that will shape the next day's creations. He steps outside, taking in the soft sounds of the village. Chickens peck quietly in the yard, goats nibble at sparse patches of grass, and a dog barks faintly in the distance. Smoke rises lazily from chimneys, curling into the clear, blue sky. The air carries the scent of damp earth, fresh hay, and a faint hint of herbs drying in sun-warmed baskets. Each smell is familiar, grounding, a quiet reminder that his work exists in a living, breathing community. The potter walks along a narrow path toward the river bank, a route he has traveled countless times. Path winds between small cottages and gardens where villagers tend vegetables, herbs, and flowers. Children play in the dirt, laughing softly, their movements lively yet gentle, a subtle soundtrack to the slow rhythm of his day. Occasionally, a villager nods in greeting, carrying a basket of eggs or a bucket of water. The potter returns the gestures with soft smiles, a quiet acknowledgement of the interconnected life of the village. Reaching the river bank, he surveys the exposed clay deposits. Filled by the recent rains, the surface is soft and gray, dotted with patches of roots, pebbles, and small pieces of debris. With a wooden spade, he carefully lifts lumps of clay, feeling their weight and texture in his hands. Some pieces are smooth and pliable, others are slightly dry, requiring more preparation. He inspects each one, breaking apart larger chunks, discarding stones, roots, or anything that might compromise the quality of the clay. As he works, he watches the river move steadily, its surface reflecting sunlight like scattered diamonds. Ducks glide across the water, and the faint buzz of insects fills the air. He takes a moment to breathe deeply, feeling the cool breeze brush against his face. The process of gathering clay is not hurried. Every action, digging, inspecting, cleaning, is deliberate, almost ceremonial. Each lump of clay is carefully chosen, the foundation for vessels that will carry water, food, and life itself. After collecting enough clay, Potter returns along the winding path to his workshop, carrying the haul in a woven basket. His steps are slow, measured, mindful of the weight he bears. Along the way, he observes the village in its daily rhythm. Baker kneads dough in a courtyard, the soft pounding of his hands a faint echo. Women gather herbs in small bundles, tying them with string to dry in the sun. The occasional clatter of a cart on the cobblestones punctuates the quiet murmur of life. Back at the workshop, he begins the process of preparing the clay for use. Large chunks are broken into smaller pieces, then mixed with older clay that has been rehydrated. Water is added gradually, and the mixture is kneaded thoroughly, pressed and folded until it becomes smooth, pliable, and uniform in texture. The process is slow, requiring attention and patience, but it is also rewarding. The transformation of rough, natural clay into a workable substance is a quiet miracle of human skill and care. As the afternoon progresses, the The potter reflects on the interconnectedness of his work with the life of the village. Each bowl or mug he shapes will serve a purpose: to hold food, water, or grain, to accompany a family meal, to withstand years of use. Each piece is small but essential, a thread woven into the fabric of daily life. Outside, the sun begins its gentle descent, casting long shadows across the workshop floor. Dust motes float in the golden light, as if dancing to the rhythm of his movements. A few villagers wander by, curious about the progress of his work. They ask questions quietly, observing the clay in its raw state. Potter explains the process patiently, describing how different clays have unique properties and how careful preparation ensures durability and beauty in the final pieces. The villagers listen attentively, nodding in appreciation. Before continuing on their own errands, the potter watches them leave, content in the knowledge that his labor is valued even in subtle ways. Late afternoon is reserved for gentle maintenance of the workshop. Tools are cleaned and arranged neatly, scraps of clay are gathered and recycled. The floors are swept, removing fine dust that could mar the surface of freshly shaped vessels. Each action is performed with care, reinforcing the potter's connection to his craft and the space in which he works. Finally, as the sun begins to sink toward the horizon, painting the sky with warm hues of orange and pink, the potter pauses to look out over the village. Smoke from chimneys curls into the soft evening air, and the faint sounds of laughter and conversation drift from open windows. He takes a deep breath, inhaling the scents of earth, wood, and river water. The day has been long, but it has unfolded with the steady, unhurried rhythm that he cherishes. In these moments, the potter feels the quiet satisfaction of being part of a continuous cycle, preparing the earth, shaping it into vessels, and participating in the life of the village. Each day is different, yet the same: the wheel, the clay, the village, all moving together in a gentle harmony. As twilight deepens and shadows lengthen, he sits for a moment, hands resting in his lap, watching the slow movement of life around him. Soon it will be time to shape the newly prepared clay, to spin it on the wheel, and to transform it into functional, enduring forms. But for now, the potter savors the calm, the quiet, the simple pleasure of work well done, and the connection between earth, hands, and community that defines every day of his life. Preparing for the kiln, morning breaks softly over the village. A faint mist lingers above the fields, and the cool air carries the scent of damp soil and distant smoke. Potter rises early, his routine as constant as the rhythm of his breath. Today is an important day, the day he prepares the kiln. The kiln stands at the edge of his workshop, a structure built of brick and stone, shaped like a large domed oven. Its surface is darkened by years of use, every layer of soot and ash telling the story of countless firings. It is old but strong, built by the potter's father long ago, maintained with devotion ever since. For the potter, the kiln is not just a tool, it is a living part of his craft, breathing heat, transforming soft earth into enduring form. He begins the day by walking around the kiln slowly, inspecting every joint, every crack in the brickwork. His hands move with familiarity, brushing away dust and ash from the previous firing. The sound of his touch against the rough surface is soft but deliberate, echoing faintly in the still air. He checks the flue, clears out the vent, and gently removes fragments of old charcoal that have gathered at the base. Once the inspection is complete, he cleans the firing chamber carefully. Using a straw broom, he sweeps away bits of broken pottery and ashes that remain from the last cycle. Each movement is patient, almost meditative. As the dust swirls in the slanting morning light, it creates a shimmering haze, a reminder of the countless hands and breaths that have passed through the space over the years. Inside the workshop, rows of unfired clay pots rest on wooden shelves. Each one has been shaped with precision and dried slowly over several days. The potter examines them closely, checking their smoothness, the evenness of their rims, the thickness of their walls. He runs his fingertips along the surface of a water jug, feeling the faint ridges left by the wheel. It is solid, well-balanced, ready for the heat that will give it strength. He begins to sort the pieces by size and shape. Large storage jars will be placed near the bottom of the kiln where the heat is strongest, while smaller bowls and cups will go higher where the temperature is gentler. This careful arrangement determines how evenly the pottery will fire, ensuring that no piece cracks under the intensity of the flames. As he works, the sounds of the village slowly awaken outside. The distant bleating of goats, the rhythmic tapping of a woodcutter splitting logs, and the soft chatter of women fetching water from the well all blend into a calm morning symphony. Occasionally, a child's laughter drifts through the open door, light and fleeting. Potter wipes his hands and steps out into the courtyard to gather fuel. Bundles of dry wood are stacked neatly under a thatched roof. Each log has been chosen for its burning quality, some for quick, hot flames, others for steady, long-lasting heat. He carries armfuls of wood to the kiln, arranging them in even layers at the base, leaving gaps for air to flow through. The scent of dry timber fills the air, warm, clean, and earthy. Once the kiln is loaded with wood, he begins to carry the unfired pots one by one from the workshop. Each piece is placed gently into the kiln, cushioned by layers of straw and sand to prevent contact with one another. The loading process takes hours, but he does not rush. Every vessel has its own place, its own small space within the dome. It is like arranging a silent choir, each pot waiting for its turn to be touched by fire. By midday, the kiln is full. Potter wipes the sweat from his brow and sits for a moment under the shade of a tree. The air hums with quiet life, the buzzing of insects, the rustle of leaves, the faint sound of running water nearby. He drinks from a clay cup, cool water drawn from the village well, and reflects on how the same element earth has shaped both the vessel in his hand and the path of his life. When the sun begins to lower, it is time to light the kiln. Potter crouches near the opening and arranges a small nest of kindling, thin sticks, dried leaves, and fragments of bark. He strikes a flint, and a spark leaps to life, catching on the dry wood. Slowly, the flame grows, licking at the base of the kiln. Smoke curls upward, carrying with it the scent of pine and ash. He watches closely as the fire takes hold, feeding it gradually, adjusting the air vents, and listening to the low, crackling sound. The heat builds slowly, steadily, like a rising breath. Inside, the clay begins its transformation, first drying, then hardening, and finally, under the most intense heat, fusing into solid stoneware. As the hours pass, the potter tends to the fire with care, adding logs, adjusting the draft, and observing the changing color of the kiln's glow from soft orange to deep red, and finally to a brilliant white at its core. It is a mesmerizing sight, the living dance of flame and air, consuming wood, reshaping clay, and releasing energy into the night. By dusk, the village sky is painted in hues of violet and gold. The kiln roars quietly, alive with purpose. Potter sits nearby, his face illuminated by the flickering light. The fire reflects in his eyes, calm and steady. Around him, the world seems to slow. The rhythmic crackle of the burning wood becomes the heartbeat of the evening. He stays beside the kiln long into the night, feeding it at regular intervals, listening to its breath. Sometimes he closes his eyes, feeling the warmth on his skin, the soft wind carrying the scent of smoke and clay. In this moment, he feels deeply connected to the earth, the fire, the air, and the water that will cool these vessels in the morning. The four elements in perfect balance, working through his hands. As midnight approaches, he steps back and watches the kiln burn at its peak, the flames within. No longer wild, but disciplined, controlled by his experience, his patience, his understanding. It is not just fire that bakes the clay, it is knowledge, care, and time. He sits quietly until the stars emerge in the clear sky above. The village sleeps, but his kiln remains awake, glowing softly like a heartbeat in the dark. The potter feels a serene satisfaction. The work of transformation is underway, silent but profound. Tomorrow, when the fire cools and the smoke fades, he will open the kiln to reveal what the fire has given back. And so, with the fire whispering behind him, he leans against the workshop wall, closes his eyes, and lets the warmth lull him into rest, knowing that his day as labor will soon turn to beauty. The unveiling the world is still when the potter wakes. The sky is pale, washed with the first light of dawn, and a cool hush rests over the village. The air smells faintly of smoke and damp clay, a reminder of the fire that burned through the night. His body aches from hours beside the kiln, but there's a quiet anticipation in his chest. Today, he will see what the fire has made. He steps outside into the soft morning mist. The kiln stands silent now, its dome dark and cool. Thin trails of smoke still drift from the vents, curling into the sky. The potter approaches slowly, his bare feet brushing against dew-damp grass. His fingertips touch the kiln's outer bricks, warm but no longer searing. The fire has done its work. Now, patience is required. He waits. This part is always the hardest. The kiln must cool naturally, or the sudden change in temperature could crack the fragile pottery inside. So he busies himself with small tasks. sweeping the workshop floor, cleaning his tools, arranging his next batch of raw clay. Yet his mind keeps drifting back to the kiln. Every few minutes he looks over his shoulder, as though the quiet structure might whisper secrets about the treasures it holds. Hours pass. The village wakes around him. A blacksmith begins to hammer in the distance, and the rhythmic clang rings faintly through the morning air. Children run past on their way to the fields, laughing, their voices high and carefree. Potters smile softly. In some of their homes, his jugs and bowls already sit on shelves, simple things but essential to daily life. He takes quiet pride in that thought. By midday, the air grows warm. Potter approaches the kiln again and tests the heat near the opening. It's cool enough now. He kneels and removes the heavy clay plug sealing the entrance. A soft breath of warm air escapes, carrying the deep, earthen scent of fired clay, smoky mineral, and strangely comforting. It smells like hard work and patience, like transformation itself. He takes a long breath, then begins to unload. Inside, the pots glow faintly in the dim light, no longer the dull gray of raw clay, but a soft, rich ochre with shades of amber and russet where the flame kissed the surface. Each vessel is different, shaped not only by his hands, but by the unpredictable breath of fire. Some have small speckles or gentle warps, imperfections that speak of their creation. He lifts each piece carefully, one by one, brushing off bits of ash and straw. A large storage jar comes out first, sturdy, well-shaped, its rim slightly darker than the body. Then a row of bowls, each with a unique tone, some with subtle glazes where the minerals in the clay have melted under heat. Potter studies them with quiet reverence. These are not just objects, they are the earth reborn. Every few moments, he pauses to admire a particular piece. A jug with a perfect curve of the handle. A mug with an unintentional but beautiful gradient of color near the base. Even the slightly cracked bowl earns his affection. He runs his thumb along the fracture, smooth, harmless, and smiles faintly. Not every flaw is a failure. Sometimes it is a signature of the process itself. By the time the kiln is empty, the shelves inside his workshop are once again full. Sunlight streams through the small window, catching the glazed surfaces, making them gleam softly. The workshop feels alive, full of quiet warmth and satisfaction. He sits for a while, resting his hands on his knees, gazing at his work. His fingers, rough with years of shaping and sanding, are streaked with traces of soot. He doesn't mind. The marks are familiar companions, reminders of his craft's intimacy. The way his hands, the earth, and the fire speak a shared language. Outside, afternoon light drapes the village in gold. He carries a few of the new pots to a small stall near the path, where villagers often come by to trade. Soon, a few familiar faces appear, a farmer, a baker, a young mother with her child. They pick up the new pieces, admiring the feel of the clay, the depth of color. Potter says little, he simply watches their expressions. It's his reward to see usefulness meet beauty, to see his work find purpose in other hands. Later, when the visitors leave, he returns to the kiln once more. Only ashes remain inside, gray and soft, shifting with the slightest breeze. He scoops a handful into a clay bowl. Some of this ash will be mixed into glazes for the next firing. Nothing is wasted here. Every ending feeds a new beginning. As the sun begins to set, he walks toward the small stream behind the workshop. The air cools, the light fades to amber. He kneels at the water's edge and washes his hands. The stream runs cold and clear, carrying away the last traces of soot. Ripples shimmer in the fading light, and for a moment the potter sees his reflection, worn, calm, content. Thinks of how his craft mirrors life itself. Every vessel begins soft and unformed, shaped by time, pressure, and care. It must endure the heat of transformation before it can truly become what it was meant to be. He smiles faintly at the thought when he returns to the workshop. Twilight has deepened. The shelves glow faintly in the lantern light, filled with rows of vessels, each one quiet, complete, and waiting for its turn in someone's story. He places his hand gently on one of them, feeling its warmth still lingering from the fire. The potter sits beside the kiln one last time. Before bed, the stars emerge above, cold and steady. The night is filled with the faint hum of crickets, the whisper of wind through trees, the low murmur of life continuing beyond his small workshop. He breathes deeply, feeling a sense of peace settle over him, the kind that comes only after honest work. The day ends as it began, in stillness, in patience, in quiet connection with the earth. The fire sleeps now, the clay transformed, the potter's heart full. Tomorrow he will begin again. Subscribe this channel for more motivational and sleeping stories.